Good morning. I'd like to call the Corporate and Residential Services Committee to order. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Mi'kma'ki and the district of Sipekne'katik, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. East Hants further acknowledges the 50 African Nova Scotian communities whose 400-year history have contributed to the province's culture, history, and legacies. We are all treaty people. First, I'll be looking for the approval or amendments to the agenda of all subcommittees. Seeing no changes, it is approved. Next is, I'll be looking for any changes to the minutes of February 17th, 2026 and February 19th, 2026 budget meeting. Seeing no changes, those minutes are approved. Our first item is new employee introductions with the CAO.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one introduction this morning, and Crystal's not actually with us today, so we'll introduce you formally at another time. But Crystal Sutherland has joined us as Development Control Clerk for a term. This position is up in the Planning and Development Department. It keeps all of the building inspectors and Kelly's staff organized and all the appointments and whatnot going with the residents. So we're very pleased to have her. She's here covering a maternity leave, and we'll surely be putting her to work while she's with us. So welcome, Crystal, who's not here.
Thank you. Next item is the Lance Volunteer Fire Department Memorandum of Understanding Extension with Adam Clarkson.
Good morning, Madam Chair. In front of you, you have a request for committee to recommend to council to extend the Lance Fire MOU. I'm not going to go into a great level of detail with this report as it's been in your package. Just a reminder that in 2024, council established an MOU for the former Lance school site when council's been looking at visioning for that site long term and looked at Lance has requested that to be a potential location for a new fire station and fitting along council's potential vision, looking at mixed use and complementary uses to that site. The report talks about all of the provincial and FSAN's reports that have been done over the last year, and it's really kind of stalled out that conversation because of the higher level provincial legislation that's at play. So really, we're in front of you today to request an extension. We're suggesting 2 years. It could be a term of whatever committee determines. But I would note one thing in our discussions with Lance Fire when we went back to them and asked them if they were open to extending it. Really, it's a signal to Lance that you're committed to having that future conversation. It's not committing you to anything. The MOU is non-binding, but it's really continuing to have that conversation. But they did respond with a couple points which are in your package, just around them understanding the uncertainty of not wanting to make any major commitments, council making any major commitments until a fire service review can be completed. So they agreed with that. They agreed with the extension of the MOU. They are a bit concerned on how the lengthy delays could possibly impact their new facility and their department. So that is, as things kind of pause, what impacts either financial and so forth would that have to them. And they did ask if there was a timeline for completing the fire service review and addressing any findings. I did respond to that, just stating the legislation was just recently tabled a few weeks ago. And the legislation did note that the fire service reviews should be based on the regulations, and the regulations are following the legislation. So there's still a few legislative process steps at the provincial level to happen first. But I did mention to them I would include it in the report, and also mention that if council wanted to look at how you could incrementally move that conversation forward, you could have a future staff report dedicated just to that topic brought back. Otherwise, that is kind of our communication with Lance. And in front of you today is, I would say, I think it's important to note in this report, you've had your conversations and listened to Enfield Fire a few months ago and their hall project. You've got a hall or fire station project that's being talked about in Lance. Those have really paused out, those conversations. So just reminding committee that these kind of delays is just kind of that impact there. And there are also broader conversations around Mount Uniacke has a substation or station they're talking about. We've heard around Maitland Fire needs around a new fire hall. So there are really some larger conversations that need to happen at some point. And just kind of reminding committee that those pieces are still out there. You really need that data and that information to help support those long-term decisions, which we don't have right now. And lastly, I think, and this is kind of hasn't been through finance. We haven't done a financial analysis, but those type of large projects are likely not going to be able to. They may be able to be funded on some of them on their own through your local area rates, but I think when they go to look at their financing, they're really going to need that municipal support for those projects. And then it's a matter of how is council of the day prioritizing their support for those projects and their debt load and servicing. But I'll just park it at that. But it's just part of the broader conversation and speaks to kind of some of Lance's comments back to us. So your recommendation in front of you is that the committee recommends to council you extend the MOU with Lance Fire for 2 years with agreed upon terms by both parties. The report did note we'd want to add in some whereas clauses to really put the context of the landscape of the provincial legislation in the MOU as well. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Adam. First to speak is the warden.
Thank you. Just regarding the fire review, and I don't necessarily disagree that at some point we're going to perhaps want to start that ball rolling, but I'm just cautionary right now. I don't think that's where we're at right now. The legislation has not, I don't believe, passed or been declared or anything yet. Provincial legislation right now is somewhat of a rolling thing, and there have already been significant changes made in the recommendations that came forward to the legislation. So I don't want to commit to spending a lot of money to do something until we at least have a little better idea of what we're going to have to spend money on down the road. And it's just a caution, I would hate to have a review done and then have to go do it all over again because we didn't do A, B, or C. Or, I would just like to wait until the dust settles a little more and we have a little more concrete information, because we know we are going to have to do a review should this legislation continue the way it is and be declared, but we also know they're going to tell us what we're going to review type thing. So those are my comments there. Regarding the other, I'm happy to move that the Corporate and Residential Services Committee recommend to council that they direct the CAO to extend the existing memorandum of understanding with Lance Volunteer Fire Department for 2 years with terms to be agreed upon by both parties.
Okay, motion's been moved and seconded. On before the motion, Councillor Rhino.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I'm going to support this motion for the fact that this has been in conversation and the flux of which we find ourselves in right now. I feel, and I have felt since I sat in this chair, that there needs to be a review of the fire services. I've been pushing it and was very happy to see that we were starting to move down that road. And I think with the legislation, once it passes, we are going to be directed, have been directed to do some kind of review with regard to other stuff. The fire service is at a tipping point. You have at least three departments out there who need halls. So at some point, and very soon, we're going to have to make some serious decisions on the fire service within these towns. Small little departments, bigger departments, small departments have a hard up against it trying to put in the proper stations of today's fire service. So I can see once this bill passes and once we get a little bit more direction, we have to do this review and go from there, because we are like I said, at a tipping point with the fire services. Yes, there's going to be costs associated with it. I understand that, but I really think that it's at a crucial point for our fire service right now. And to wait too long for the government, you want to hear what the government's going to say. Well, I was in on that Zoom meeting on a Thursday night, and this is what we're gonna do. Then on a Tuesday, it all changed or not completely, but a 180. So, you know, government may say one thing and 4 days later, they're gonna turn it around. So it's unpredictable, but I think we have to take the lead in this and go on. And, I'll support the motion. I was gonna leave it for Councillor Tingley to make the motion, but the warden got ahead. So anyway, that's my thoughts.
Thank you, Councillor. Next to speak is Councillor Tingley.
Through the chair, I'm going to support the motion, obviously, but I would also support a motion to do a study, even if it was only in the corridor area. Lance Volunteer Fire Department, they're doing an excellent job of nursing this fire hall along, but they need a fire hall now. They don't have adequate space for their trucks, their equipment. They don't have a place to treat their clothing and equipment after they come from a fire or some other event. They don't have showers. They don't have proper bathrooms for the men and women. It was fine in 1971, 50 years ago, but it's totally inadequate now, as far as I'm concerned. They're very cooperative. They're making it work. From what I read from the province, this legislation and what they're going to do here is going to roll out over the next umpteen years. It's not going to happen immediately within the next year or two. As Councillor Rhino said, something definitely needs to be done. We know we're going to have to plan for this. It's not a matter of us doing something and it's going to have no value. We're going to be, or somebody's going to be here in the next council, because this is going to stretch out into the next council. And I feel bad for Lance Volunteer Fire Department that it's being kicked down, the can is being kicked down the road by the province or the municipality to collaborate with them and try to get some planning done here. I don't know what would have to be done, but there's nothing stopping us from doing a study here of our own except for ourselves. And it would be just good planning. It would be a roadmap. We don't have to do anything immediately, but this to set on our hands for the next 2 or 3 years and not do nothing and have these firefighters operating in a building like that and still starting at square one 2 or 3 years from now, I don't have a good feeling about that. I don't think we're doing them justice. I'd like to hear what Adam has to say about, what the downside would be to do such a study, at least in the corridor area at this time.
Go ahead, Adam.
Through you, Madam Chair, I guess a study in the corridors is a conversation that the committee would have to have. We would have to bring back a report and kind of talk to committee of what that could look like if that was the will. You've heard a lot of conversation from the province around risk assessments, levels of service, all of those pieces. We don't know what the regulations will say, but really, to give you an answer to your question around the downside to a corridor study, I think staff would like some time, if that was the direction, to bring back committee the information to provide you the pros and cons of that and how we could see that incrementally moving forward or all at once, and the risks associated with not having provincial legislation and regulations. Could you be spending money and then spending more money to relook at some of the work that you've already done, or could you do some pieces to set yourself up for the bigger picture so you're not trying to do it all at once? So I can't really directly answer your question right now, but we would have to lay that out in a report for the corridor if that's what the committee was wanting.
Well, I'd be prepared to make a motion to get a report back from staff after this motion. I don't need the province. I don't think, if anybody's honest with themselves here, I don't think we need the province to tell us we need a needs and risk assessment. And there's absolutely zero preventing us from doing that, except for ourselves. And why would you not do it? Like, what good reason is there not to do some kind of a deeds and risk study now? On the risk side of it, our community is growing fairly fast. Like, we're one of the fastest growing municipalities in Nova Scotia. I hear the third largest by population. Since this, I don't know about the other fire departments, but since this fire department in Lance was, or fire hall was built in 71, the risk have changed significantly in Lance. The structures and the density, there's no comparison. There's 3 apartments in the planning or being built right now in Lance that are going to have 200 and some units in them, just themselves. Like, 50 years ago, there might have been 1,000 people in Lance. Plus, having these firefighters go back to that fire hall and try to jam these apparatuses and equipment back in such a small place and no place to what's the word for it? Decontaminate. It's just not even close to being to standard today. And it's just amazing what they're doing. Like, when you go in to see them, they're upbeat, they work hard, they do a great job, and I'm sure it's the same in all the other fire departments. I think there's an onus on us to try to collaborate. The days when that fire department was built, a group of firefighters and their spouses got together and raised funds and got somebody to donate land, materials, and they slapped it up themselves. This can't be done anymore. And, they're out there doing a great job in the community. And I think it's incumbent on us
Point
to
of order,
do some
we have a
planning.
motion on the floor, we can make another motion following this motion and have this discussion.
Well, it's not out of order. I'm trying to make an argument as to why we should do some planning around this.
The motion is to extend a memorandum MOU with
Okay.
Lance Fire Department.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor. Warden Rolston?
I was simply going to suggest that we deal with this motion, and then if council is interested, we have a discussion on having staff bring us a report about what a review could look like, and that perhaps we could reach out to EMO and ask those folks if they have some idea what's going to be in there, which would form part of that report, and then make a decision on what, if and what kind of a review we would do after that. That's all. Thank you.
To the motion, Councillor Merriam.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And question to staff. So to start with, I'm also supportive of the motion. And a question for staff about, in the staff report at the bottom of page 2, there's a very short paragraph that does talk about a potential, the fact that a review would have multiple steps to complete. And if council were looking for further information to move this forward incrementally, staff could provide a detailed report on this topic. Now, I understand what Councillor Tingley said with his pondering the merits of a broader discussion, but my question for staff is on this particular motion. I read this a bit confused. Is staff recommending that these steps be completed now, or could you provide some perspective on that, please?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. The reason that paragraph is in this report is based on the feedback we heard from Lance Volunteer Fire Department. So the bullet points above spoke to their concerns around asking council if there's a timeline on a fire protection review and so forth. So inserted that paragraph to say, well, if council wanted to talk about that, to listen to, see if there's a way to address Lance's concerns, you could look at that. And there likely is multiple steps to a overall fire master planning, which your master planning is likely your overarching document, but you've got to kind of look at the needs assessments, your service levels and so forth into your planning. But we don't have all those pieces. And to speak to kind of the warden's comments earlier, we did reach out to the province last week and asked if based on the draft legislation and the lack of regulations, if there's an opportunity how council could move this forward if they chose to. So we have asked the province on that. We've also asked them if they have a copy of the risk assessment tool that they've been talking about to understand all those pieces. So I think clearly it's inserted in there to really look at if council wanted to look at Lance's kind of feedback. How could you look at that? You could have a report that could break down those components, and you still may say, you know what, this is too much, we need to wait for the province, or you could look at how you can incrementally move it forward. So I hope that provides clarity.
Yes, it does, and I'd like to move an amendment to the motion that it include that that council ask staff to provide a dedicated report on this topic.
I think it would be better as a separate motion.
To study the issue further.
Yeah, I think it needs
Yeah.
to be a separate motion.
Okay,
You can make that.
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Next to speak is Counselor Rhino.
Thank you, Madam Chair, but if we're gonna deal with this motion first, without any amendments, okay, we'll deal with it, but I'd like to continue the conversation and keep my place in line.
Okay, we've got a motion on the floor. Seeing no one left to speak, we'll go to the vote. And the motion has passed unanimously. Counselor Rhino, you can go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate the Councillor Tingley's enthusiasm. However, I'm a bit hesitant in jumping on a review quite this, like next month or whatever. I do believe that we have to get a little bit more information from the province on what they want. But I don't want to pull this out. Let's say, what I'm thinking is, if what we find out, let it maybe, and then maybe possibly have an attempt at this in September to start one. Because if we don't wait a little while just to see where the chips are falling with the province at this time, I think, we could be starting to a review or a study, and then be kicked in the can and say, no, that wasn't what we wanted, and here we go again. We should have waited that little bit of time, but I'm not for waiting, years. This is 3-4 months is, to me, should be long enough, and then we should know, kind of have more information from the province at that time, so we can go ahead on it. There's no way that I would support just a review or study or whatever label you want to put on it for one single area of the municipality. I think, in my opinion, we have to do this across the board and deal with this fire service as a total municipal issue, recognizing the different regions of the municipality. And I think from there,
Shouldn't we be following the agenda? We've already dealt with this. Are we adding something to the agenda?
So we've just voted on the memorandum of understanding, and there is potentially another motion coming forward. And this is the pre-app. I think it's a continuation of the conversation that we're already having. But are you willing to make a motion, Counselor, or would you like someone else to do that?
no, I
And you
think there's a gentleman across the road that may want to make a motion, but if he does make the motion, that's how I stand on this. We have to do this as completely across the board, not just one certain area of the municipality. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Next to speak is Counselor Tingley.
Through the chair, the only reason I was suggesting just the corridor areas, because I wasn't sure whether the rural area, based on the warden's comments, whether they want to move ahead with it. But very obviously, Lance would like to move ahead with it. I'm sure Infield would like to move ahead with it, and others would like to move ahead with it. There's not much I can add to what I've already said, but we advocate all the time that we'd like to have autonomy. And here's an area where we do have some autonomy. We could do this, and we know that whatever the province comes out, they're gonna tell you to do your own fire study, that's unique to your own municipality. They're not gonna tell you, how to do it. They'll put some things in about, safety and, that sort of thing, but they're not gonna tell us where to put fire halls or how to build fire halls and how to spend the money and that sort of thing. And we need that information. We need to know what our risks are now, and we need to be planning around for the multi-millions of dollars that have to be spent. And I would be prepared right now to make a motion that staff bring back a report on the level of study we could do at this time for risk and needs assessment to move this thing along.
I'll second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. On before the motion, Deputy Warden Dixon.
Thank you, Chair. I guess my question is similar to Councillor Rhino is, we're doing this before the province is coming back with their report in September. And the question I have to the mover is, does this include all of East Hants or just the corridor?
It would include all of East Hants.
Okay, then I would support if it includes all of East Hants.
And-
Everything else has been answered, thank you.
And on the province, like we're stuck on what the province is gonna do. They're gonna come back and tell us to do our own report, just like they did with the coastal protection
Okay.
plan and everything else.
Point of order, Counselor. We've got others to speak, starting with the Warden Rolston.
Thank you. My earlier comments were certainly not aimed at not doing a review in the rural area only. I'm not sure how anyone would have taken that context from them. I'm very pleased to hear that we are certain that we know what the province is going to do and what they are going to require us to do, because I do not have that certainty. And I have watched budget discussions, I have read the legislation, I've had conversations with people, and I do not think that as yet any one of us has any certainty as to what the province is going to require us to do. Having said that, I do not mind having a report from staff outlining. I'm afraid the wording of the motion for me is a little open-ended, because if I understand it, we're asking for a report telling us what we could do. Well, we could do any kind of a review we want to do without a motion at all. I would like to see the motion targeted a little bit more to let staff know just what we're looking for. A report on what type of a review, we could do that might complement or, work with whatever the province requires us to do. And then we would decide at that time whether it was appropriate to do the report now or when the report was received, or whether, as Councillor Rhino suggested, we might want to wait until September and see what information we have then. So I'm certainly open to having a report from staff, but I don't want it to be a great big giant encompassing report that, says we could do the moon. I understand that there are challenges in the fire service, and I would respectfully suggest that the uncertainty introduced to the process by the province has not helped that any at this time. But at the end of the day, whether we like it or not, we are a child of the province, and we will do what the province tells us to do. That's how it works in Nova Scotia. And I just want to make sure that we're not going to spend tens of thousands of dollars on a report and then have to spend tens of thousands of dollars on another report. I would like as much of a comfort level as I could get that the money we would spend in any report would at least complement or be part of a future report that we already know the province is going to require us to do. And I do believe that there will be specific you shall do things in the reports when we get that information. Thank you.
Adam, would you like to comment on that?
Just for a point of clarity, I don't know that there's a question out to me out of what the warden mentioned, but that the clarity is for all of committee. I've heard it mentioned 3 times around September. I think there's maybe a misunderstanding. Originally, the province was aiming to have their legislation tabled in September. They did it in February of this year. They moved it, 6 or 8 months. So if committee is thinking there's more coming in September, maybe, but the legislation's on the table right now. So just if you're thinking in mind September something else is coming, it may, but that's not the messaging we're hearing from the province. I think it was handed, unless there's something I'm missing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Merriam, to the motion.
Yes, it is. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, in terms of this motion, I think having a staff report would be useful for the reasons that Councillor Tingley mentioned. We all represent different fire districts. I also represent Milford Fire, and I would like to think that a part of assessing the report would be, of course, checking back with our member departments, but also I'm a member of the East Hants Fire Services Committee, and I think it would be a very good venue to include the committee in the assessment of any report that is prepared. Thank you.
Thank you. CIO?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was going to mention the September date as well. I think that date is a red herring now because the legislation has been put on the floor of the House. I also think there's value in doing this kind of report now as opposed to waiting to get it. This report isn't going to commit council to do anything, but it will allow staff to go through the process and the motions of thinking this whole issue through and where we might need to be in the interim and then in the longer term. So I think there is value in going through that exercise and starting to educate council on what this might look like, and that will include conversations with the fire service and with the province and with emergency management, the Deputy Minister of Emergency Management, and still participating in all of the engagement sessions that they're having. I assume those will continue, although the legislation does look very different now than what we thought it would look like 2 weeks ago. But I don't think anything is actually going to change over the long term. I think eventually they will get to where they need to be. It'll just be done differently and with different communication with their groups that they're working with. So for what it's worth, I think the report for council is probably a good start to feel like you're moving this forward and getting to the next level.
Thank you. Next to speak is Councillor Rhino.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Clarifying my September thing. I'm fully aware that, this was supposed to come out in September, come out in the budget. Okay, I'm fully aware of that. Well, with the September issue, I threw September out there because we're not gonna meet in August and we're gonna be back. By that time, we should have more clarity around that, around what the expectations of the province are. However, I've heard it say, well, there's probably nothing not gonna change, it's not coming out. Where were you the other night when in 4 days this changed completely? So September, that could bring another change from the government. Who knows? This is an unpredictable government that seems to change at a flip of a coin. So, I hear what you're saying. I don't have a lot of positive thoughts about this. It's going to stay the same from here on in, But that was my thing around September. But by the time September rolls around, we should have hopefully enough clarity to go ahead and hopefully get a report started with all over the municipality. Now, I want to clarify this motion. Is it just to come back with a report saying what could possibly be in a full report? Is that what I'm hearing? So I know. Pardon?
In my mind, it's an outline of the process and what it is.
Okay.
You could study, you could not study, it's just a report on bringing the topic sort of putting your arms around the topic and trying to figure out what it might look like.
Okay,
That's why
that does bring clarity to it, and I can support the motion.
we're not preparing RFPs or anything at this point. We're
Okay,
just-
no, I know.
You folks need to get your arms around.
We're not jumping
what-
ahead.
What a study looks
Okay.
like and what it might
All right,
study.
I can support that.
You on the same page, Adam?
Go ahead, Adam.
Yes, and I think the study would also make notes to the warden's point earlier around ensuring if you were to move anything forward or not at this time, how do you not spend good money after bad money, right? So that's important for committee to understand.
Thank you. Councillor Musa to the motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'm full support of the motion and about spending money. We're spending lots of money for something way smaller than this, like recreation study costs so much money. So for something, it's gonna be in 100 millions cost for the fire department to spend some money on that is obvious. We gotta spend some money on that. And if our recommendation comes better than the province or similar to the province or need to be changed, we can change it. But to wait all the time and like what happened with the coastal protection, they did, and at the end you gotta do it yourself. So I feel it's gonna be too big for the province, and they're gonna say, okay, that's too much for us. You gotta deal with it too. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no one left to speak, there's a motion on the floor. We'll go to the vote. Sorry, Councillor Hebb.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just sorry. I just want to be clear, make clarification. This is for all of East Hants, this motion, is it?
Yes.
Good, thank you.
Okay, now we'll go to the vote. And the motion has passed 9-1 with Councillor McPhee voting nay. Okay, and the next item on the agenda is municipal fee policy, impound and boarding fees for dogs with Kelly Ash.
Good morning, everyone. Basically, council requested an additional report last month just to give some additional information before a decision was made on implementing the changes to the municipal fees policy. There are some tabled motions that will need to be addressed. Staff are recommending that those motions be defeated and the updated recommendation to the policy be approved, and let me explain why. So I heard everything that was said at the last meeting and then in the subsequent policy meeting. So what we're proposing is an amendment to the fees policy that states what we have here. So it's similar to what's already in there for like waiving of building permit fees and things like that. So where special circumstances such as death in the family, sickness, loss of employment, or other form of substantial personal financial hardship occur, as well as where staff are of the opinion that the fees should be fully or partially waived, based on the situation which led to the impoundment of a dog, the municipal compliance officer may use their discretion to waive the impound fee and or daily boarding fee. So if that's something that you're in support of, we can do an internal policy to provide more direction on that as well, so that those fees, if we waive them, can be in line with the values of council. So I guess what I wanted to add to that, so what was mentioned last month was that in 2025, the SPCA only impounded 5 dogs for the entire year of 2025. Those dogs were not your typically found dogs or dogs that were lost. They were dogs that were fierce or dangerous, or there was a dog bite, or there was a reason we took them. When we managed dog control prior to this, when it was in-house with us, I can honestly tell you, it's rare that we pick up a lost dog or a found dog in those situations that the warden had mentioned before. Communities normally support when those things happen. They get posted in the Lost Dogs Network. The next thing we know, somebody's found the dog and it's never ever gotten to us, and we've never gotten to that point. With that said, if that were to happen, we do have things that we do already in place. We wouldn't just take a dog straight to the pound. or the kennel operator. What we would normally do is we're checking for a dog tag, we're checking for a microchip, we're checking the Lost Dogs Network, we're checking any social media channels we have access to before we would ever take that dog to the kennel. So we don't want to take that dog to the kennel if we don't have to either. Our goal is to reunite them with their owner. The other thing I would say is that we've discussed, I spoke with our communications team yesterday, we can actually do some updates to the website as well, and through our after hours call center, that if somebody does happen to have an instance where their dog got out unexpectedly, we may look at putting something on our website to report a lost dog, or to call into the call center if during our after hours operation we can deal with that and they can report it that way and we can have that information on file. So I would say like that's our last resort, is to get the dog to a kennel. We always want to reunite. And I would ask, if at all possible, to let us try it this way and see if it works and the fees are not a hindrance. And if it is, then we can absolutely address this at any point in time. But ultimately, we want this to be a bit of a deterrent so that people are responsible dog owners. And as I had said before, these boarding fees and the fees that we're proposing, they're only a partial cost recovery. They don't cover all aspects relating to impounding a dog, so it doesn't account for staff time, it doesn't account for the vehicle, it doesn't account for all of those things. So I'm hoping that this will be something that would be acceptable. So this is the recommended motion that we have before you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. First to speak is Warden Rolston.
Thank you. Just want to weigh in and say this is a little more complicated than it first appears. I'm fully in support of staff's suggestion, but the motion that was tabled has to be lifted from the table and defeated in council, not committee. And in order to, because it's a council motion that was tabled, so we can't do that here right now. The new motion would have to be done here now in order to be dealt with in our council meeting this afternoon to give notice. So we will need the recommended motion that we intend gives notice of intent for updates as attached to this agenda. Does have to be made. I know it's a little confusing, but, and then at council, we will deal with the old one and with this one. So I just wanted to throw that out there for a little bit of clarity. We can't lift the motion from the table at this time. That has to be done in council. But even though we already have a motion giving intent, that was for the other motion, which was later tabled, and we do have to do another motion giving the intent. So hope I haven't confused it more. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Warden. Seeing no one to speak, what is your wish? Go ahead, Warden.
Okay, then I will move that the Corporate and Residential Services Committee recommends that council give notice of intent for updates to the municipal fee policy as attached to the Executive Committee agenda dated March the 10th, 2026.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Seeing no one to speak, we'll go to the vote. And the motion is passed unanimously. Next item on the agenda is Business Climate Survey with Graham Scott. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, Madam Chair, good morning. I'm here today to briefly outline the results of the Business Climate Survey for Council. So just as a bit of background, the Business Climate Survey was a pilot project that was identified in our division's council-approved business plan for this year and is aligned with Council's strategic plan and Council's economic development plan in the areas to support business and and build the local economy. So just at a very high level, we delivered the Business Climate Survey as a pilot project in 2025. We received just over 70 responses to the Business Climate Survey, which is representative of about 11% of council's overall business establishments. And this survey was open to all businesses and not-for-profits in East Hanson. We gathered postal codes as part of that to validate locations and ensure that the results were representative of the community. Just at a high level for council, within the staff report itself, I've outlined what the key findings of the survey were and how that information can be used going forward by both organizations. On this, we did partner with the Chamber of Commerce to deliver the survey, and they were instrumental in sort of building out the topics and the questions. And both organizations will be able to use this information going forward to build out their business support efforts in the coming years. And in addition, we'll continue to deliver this annually for council and bring back the results so that we can measure trends over time for you. So at a very high level, you can see we've outlined a number of bullets there, but really the local economy is driven by small enterprises, which is not surprising. Most have fewer than 5 employees, and there's a good mix of operational models and ownership models within East Hants. Most businesses are feeling confident, but they're also cautious due to the rising costs and external pressures. And there were a number of factors identified, and there's a good section within the Business Climate Summary Report that we've attached to this that I would suggest everyone have a look at, that outlines the areas that we could improve factors and services within the community in. But at a high level, cell phone and internet services definitely dominated that area in terms of what could be improved. As well, housing availability and affordability. Taxes, as always, are a concern at all 3 levels, and then the availability of commercial lands and buildings. And those were all areas that the business community felt needed improvement. In terms of concerns and labor force, rising wage, benefit costs, and turnover remain the key concerns for businesses. However, they're actively providing training and skill upgrading to try and build resiliency within their businesses. In terms of technology and innovation, businesses are open to it. Your business community is open to it. But again, the internet and cell phone challenges really dominate how effective and efficient their operations can be with that. And then, as no surprise, the tariffs, duties, and regulations are sort of, as we go into the future, some of the biggest challenges that businesses are going to have to face, or they feel they're going to have to face. So again, just for council to summarize, this pilot project was very well received within the business community. The Chamber of Commerce was a great partner for us, and we'll continue to deliver this annually for council and bring those results back so that council can have a good understanding of what where their business community is at, and the opportunities and challenges that they're facing as we go forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. First to speak is Councillor Merriam.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for the report, Graham. Very interesting, some fantastic information here. Are you able to bring up the report?
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to refer to the chart at the top of page 7, please. Maybe you could even increase the size of it just because thank you. Yeah, no, and I just had a couple of observations I thought I'd share from this. Things that maybe didn't jump out at me from the report. I know it's hard to cover everything, but in looking at this, I was curious about the concern, looking at some of the forecasted concerns over the next 12 months. And one of those is undoubtedly rising borrowing costs being a concern of businesses. And one of the stats that's out there is that in the ballpark of 60% of mortgages are coming up for renewal or have come up for renewal in the 2025 to 26 period. And when low rate mortgages come up at higher rates, this is could be very challenging for everyone, but for in this context for businesses. I was also, so I guess I'd be curious on a future report to kind of see, how that evolved and what actually transpired. And the other point that jumps out at me is the concern about attracting new business or retaining current customers. And it seemed like from my notes that was quite a jump. 29% called it a challenge in the last 12 months to 42% calling it a concern in the next 12 months. So I was curious about why, and not for now, but maybe for a future follow-up, just to kind of maybe probe a bit more there as well. And finally, just concerns, we covered it under rising borrowing costs, but concerns about getting financed in general. So it's one thing if you have a mortgage and it's coming up, but there could be other businesses that are looking to expand, and they're just wondering, can I get the appropriate financing that I need? And also the concern about maintaining product and inventory levels. So those are a few observations I had from your report. I don't know if you want to comment on any of that, but I thought it could be in the context of a future update. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Adam would just like, okay, you go ahead, Graham.
Through Madam Chair, thank you for those comments, and certainly we'll take note of them. I think in sort of anecdotally through Council's business support service, the concerns around attracting new customers or retaining current customers, I think relates a lot, and I can't speak for certain, obviously, because this was a survey question delivered in that manner, but more so from an anecdotal perspective, it relates likely to the rising cost of products and services, and so and the shying away by consumer spending would be my guess. So the ability of businesses to keep customers and attract new ones, I think they feel those pressures. And again, those would be anecdotal observations, not statistical.
Thank you. Go ahead, Adam.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to make sure it was kind of acknowledge Council's contribution in your current upcoming budget fiscal. So the survey pointed to various levels of tax concerns at different levels of government. And just a reminder, Council did decrease their commercial tax rate in your upcoming fiscal. So credit to you to, trying to work towards kind of the business climate out there. Just important to note that for Council.
Thank you. Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question deals with the retaining employees. Did any of the businesses indicate why they have difficulty keeping employees, or employees going from one business to another based on benefits and salary, or looking for a better cost of living for them?
Through you, Madam Chair, thank you for that question. Again, the survey itself didn't elaborate on the specifics of that, just due to, again, the nature of the survey delivery. But again, anecdotally, I would share through our business support service and through Galen's meetings with local businesses, Galen being your one of your business development officers, that the challenge in retaining employees has been a ongoing issue since sort of prior to COVID. Again, it has to do, I think, with the shrinking labor force in the province for sure, and then as well the challenge around the competitive nature of the labor market that is out there. And even though we're starting to see, our businesses are starting to see some relief in that manner, attracting and retaining the right employees is a challenge that they continue to struggle with, and those are ones that I think through supports like Nova Scotia Works and NS Skills, the province is attempting to address at sort of a more macro economy level.
Just to follow up, did they indicate that because of retirements they're having difficulty to get qualified people up to speed, or is there a gap?
Through you, Madam Chair, again, not specifically identified in this survey, no.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no one left to speak, And there's no motion coming forward from this report. So, thank you, Graham.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the 2026-27 water utility operating budget with Wade. Oh, okay, Jordan.
Okay. Through the chair, today I will be presenting the 26-27 to 28-29 three-year water utility operating budget. This budget has been presented to the Nova Scotia Regulatory and Appeals Board as part of the East Hants Water Utility Rate Review submission. And a final decision on the rate review is expected later this month prior to April 1st, 2026. In this table, from left to right, we have the budget and projections for 25-26, and then the three-year budget from 26-27 to 28-29. From top to bottom, we start with operating revenue, and then it goes operating expenditures and net operations below that. And then we have the non-operating revenue and expenditures, and we have an overall net at the bottom, which would indicate surplus or deficit. Starting with operating revenue, metered sales budgeted revenue in 26-27 is based on the new proposed rates and projected growth. This is expected to generate approximately $500,000 in additional revenue in 26-27 and will better align with the expenses that the utility has been realizing for a number of years, which has been evident with the recent deficits. Bulk water revenue for 25-26 is projecting higher than budget by approximately $95,000. This is due mainly to a dry summer in 2025. Based on prior year trends in combination with this high projection and the new rates as per the rate review, the budget has been increased by $25,000 up to $175,000 for 26-27 and each of the 2 years after. This is a fairly conservative estimate compared to the current year projection because we cannot guarantee that the utility will see a repeat of last summer moving forward. Next would be operating expenditures, and we'll actually go over them shortly when we discuss the variances, so I will skip over them for now. The only other items that are non-typical here, we have the federal program grant, which is $67,500 in 25-26 projection. And this is actually the usage of housing accelerator funds, which was based on council motion relating to the regional water treatment plant intake study. And the other item is in 26-27 budget, it was presented as part of the rate review that the utility will be using $450,000 of its cumulative surplus to offset a deficit. And what this will allow is for the utility to keep rates a bit lower in this upcoming year and allow for a more gradual increase. One of the primary goals of this rate review was to find ways that the utility can mitigate sharp rate increases to the best of its ability. And using this cumulative surplus was deemed to be the best method in achieving this. At the bottom of the table, you can see the $450,000. It comes off of the cumulative surplus in 26-27. And then we are expecting this cumulative surplus to remain at $48,000 for each of the few years after that. Differences from 25-26 to 26-27 are as follows. We are budgeted to break even in 26-27, whereas we had a budgeted deficit of $883,340 in 25-26. For source of supply, there's a net decrease of $154,628. This is primarily due to the Grand Lake water withdrawal assessment, which is expected to be completed towards the end of March 2026 for $150,000. And I would note for this timeline, if the assessment does end up taking place in April due to timing constraints, we would bring this forward to council as part of our year-end carry-forward adjustments list. In the end, the cumulative surplus is going to be $48,000 at the end of 2026, 2027, regardless of which fiscal year that the assessment takes place. For power and pumping, we have a decrease of 17,350. And this decrease is mainly driven by two different things. We have facility signage replacement budget had been reduced by $9,000 because we completed some installs in 25-26. And there's a water tower foundation repair that was completed in 25-26, and that also led to a budget-to-budget decrease of $9,000. For water treatment, there's a net increase of $84,801. This is primarily driven by salaries, benefits, and training, which increased by $89,000. And of this $89,000, most of this was actually due to the new supervisor position. And of that new position, 75% of it, of the salary and benefits, are charged to the water treatment area. In addition, we had monitoring cameras installed in 25-26 at the treatment plant, and this led to a decrease of small equipment of $8,800. For transmission and distribution, there's a net increase of $93,632. Water leak repairs remain one of the more costly expenses in the water utility. The budget has been increased by $51,000 due to historical trends and also aging infrastructure. In addition, salaries, benefits, and training, they increased by $39,612. And again, this one is primarily due to the new supervisor position. I'd mentioned 75% of it went to water treatment. The other 25% hits here in transmission and distribution. Grants have decreased by $15,600, and this is related to the Cross Connection Control Program, which had an original budget of $97,000, and we are carrying $82,000 of this into 26-27. For administration, we have a net increase of $10,864. Part of this, well, more than part of this depreciation expense has an increase of $23,000. This increase is due to water capital projects that are to be completed in 25-26. This depreciation expense is slightly offset by salaries and benefits, where we actually see a $6,000 decrease in this area. And that's due to having a lower market review budget in 26-27 as compared to the prior year. Professional fees also saw a decrease of $15,000, and this is directly related to our rate review being completed in 25-26. Interest revenue sees a decrease of $25,000, and this is due to the interest rate decline in our budget as compared to 25-26. We have an increase to capital expenditure out of operations by $17,500, and this will take that up to $55,000 even. This is the funding source for capital for the water meter replacement new meter capital project, as you saw in the capital budget. And then finally, another note on the transfer from cumulative surplus. We discussed this on the previous slide, and this is $450,000, and its purpose is to eliminate a deficit in 26-27 to bring us back to net even. And that concludes the presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. First to speak is Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of questions through you to staff, either Jordan or Jesse. Is the 48,000 projected for the budget 2026 going forward a healthy surplus?
Through the chair, it's hard to say it's healthy when just a few years ago we were at 1.5 million. We were in a much more comfortable position. However, our consultants, as part of the rate review, they looked at the numbers and they felt pretty confident that we could keep it at that 48,000. In the nature of water utility expenses, if something unexpected came up, then it could dip into that fairly quickly. But really, I would say it's on staff at this point to ensure that we mitigate whatever expenses we can moving forward.
Thank you for that. The second part is the number of water breaks or leaks increasing as we're going forward? And that's for the director. I know there's an increase of 51,000, but.
Go ahead, Jesse.
Through you, Madam Chair, it was This past fiscal year was a high water break year, and the last, I would say 18 months has been higher. Now, a lot of work has been done to go after those leaks, and I think that's also part of it. And to get to a place where the system is cleaner overall, and the hope is that that is the case going forward. That it will start seeing reductions based on the efforts over the last year and a half.
Okay, just to finish off, fuel costs, as we noticed in the last week or so, that fuel costs have skyrocketed. Do you anticipate after going some other place for dollars and cents? If it's not budgeted, would you have to go to reserves in that case if the present rate continues? I know you have to move equipment, so.
Through the chair, historically, fuel costs aren't one of our larger expenses in the water utility. I would note, we can't use reserves for operations in the water utility. We're limited to capital. So it's kind of one of those things. We present a budget, and no matter what throughout the year, there's gonna be deviation in operations one way or the other. So really, if we were to see a spike in one area, we'd look to mitigate costs in another to compensate. We're constantly looking at the numbers, both the revenues and expenses. So really, that's what we would do.
Okay, thank you, those are mine.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, seeing no one left to speak. What is your wish? Councillor Tingley.
I'll move the motion, move to recommend to council to approve the East Hants Water Utility financial estimates 2026, 2027 to 2028, 2029 as presented.
Moved and seconded. Seeing no one to speak, we'll go to the vote. And the motion is passed unanimously. Thank you, Jordan. Seeing no other items on the Corporate and Residential Services Committee, that concludes the committee for today, and we are adjourned. We will schedule a 15-minute break, coming back at 10:25 into Infrastructure and Operations.
Thank you. Okay, we're gonna call the Infrastructure and Operation Committee to order. Before I start, we have regret from Councillor Perry, and I'm the vice chair, so I'll take over. The first item is the approval of the minute of February 17, 2026. Any error or omission? Seeing none, we go to the next item. Solid waste tip and fee policy update with Andrea. Okay, where is Andrea?
Good morning, everyone. So today I have for you a one-year tipping fee schedule for the Waste Management Center. Traditionally, we've done 2 to 5 year tipping fee schedules. However, as you know, we have a few contracts that are extended for a year. So once those procurements happen later this year, we'll be able to put together a longer standing tipping fee schedule. So if I go down. I will say that these tipping fees are reflected in the budget for 26-27 already. Most of our prices go up about 3% per year, with a few adjustments based on actual contract extensions for this year. The fees are present there, and I'm essentially open for questions.
Okay, thank you, Andrea. All right, Councillor Hebb.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would move that the Infrastructure and Operations Committee recommend that council give notice of intent to adopt the proposed amendment solid waste tipping fee policy with pricing scheduled effective April 1st, 2026 to expire March 31st, 2027.
Second.
Moving second. I see nobody on. We'll go to the vote. Okay, votes are in and it passed unanimously. Okay. Our second item is possible update to bylaw IO 400, solid waste collection and disposal bylaw.
Thank you. So this morning I have come to committee to let you know that we are going through the bylaw for solid waste. As you know, we've had some recent regulation changes with recycling, so anytime something like that happens, we open up the bylaw to make those changes, and since we're in there, we look for any housekeeping items that need to be done. So what is in your package is proposed outlines for what the bylaw will look like. The intention for staff is to get feedback if there is any, give you highlights of some of the things we're looking to change, and then go back and have a look and do all the wording that we need to do, because essentially at the end of the day, we want to have our bylaw registered so that we can issue summary fence tickets where required. In addition to that, in looking at the bylaw, there's a number of pieces in this that are more policy related versus a bylaw. It's not something we would ever issue somebody a summary fence ticket on. So we're looking to move that the items in the bylaw are things that we would actually enforce, something we would have scheduled in the summary fence ticket regulation, and then the other material would fall into a policy, which does allow us to have more flexibility working with the CAO to update things that might come up that wouldn't really warrant us going through a bylaw process, essentially. So you have a couple things in your package. One was our current bylaw, which has lots of colors in it, just to kind of give you an idea of things that we would say are still bylaw, things that we would say is policy, and some things that we think kind of fall into both categories. Essentially, the proposed changes we're looking for is to ensure some clear language and remove sections that no longer apply because, again, regulations have changed for recycling, for instance. Define some responsibilities for all parties. Ensure that we have clear enforceable provisions. So again, that we can issue summary fence tickets if needed. We also wanted to reduce gaps in waste-related enforcement options. We've certainly heard from the community and from members of council on things related to litter on properties and material escaping from developments. And so those are some of the things that went into sort of a clean version that you see in there. Again, that's very simple language, and it will likely change to more specific regulation type language when it comes back to you. But essentially, it's a conceptual update for you. And again, like I said, the policy would be an administrative policy, which would go through the CAO, and it would provide a framework to how solid waste is managed in East Hants, provide us some more flexibility, so when changes come from stewardship programs or things like that, we can update that easily. Again, clarity and documentation. So for example, right now in the bylaw, we talk about collection timing, which isn't really something that we would have really in a bylaw. That's more something, or holiday adjustments. Those are things that we do. And again, the Waste Management Center, we would like to see that in the policy as well, just so that it's all captured. Everything to do with solid waste would be in one policy on how we do business. And I'm open for questions.
Okay, first on is Councilor Mitchell.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Just a quick question to staff. These changes in some form will be passed out to the public as an idea what the changes might be that affect them for household disposal or going to the Waste Management Center, et cetera, et cetera.
So through you, Mr. Chair. So we're not really looking for anything that's going to change what we do day to day. We're looking at really documenting it differently. The biggest change for the bylaw is really about the changes from recycling. So that regulation change, there's lots of stuff in our bylaw about how to recycle and the expectations, but where we don't manage recycling anymore, Circular Materials does for Nova Scotia, that would have to come out. So essentially, we're not looking at huge changes. So when we come back to committee, we would clearly outline sort of the housekeeping items, things that would be removed because of new regulations, so you could see that. So then you would go through the bylaw readings, right? 1 and 2.
Okay, thank you. I was going to move the recommendation, but I see some councillors wishing to speak, so I'll wait. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Next, Councillor Rhino. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if this is the correct area, but I have been having numerous times having problems with the responsibilities of the hauler itself. With regard to once a green bin is dumped, it's being put on the edge of the road. Now, I've had this problem for quite a while, and with the wind conditions along that shore, if they're not placing that back far enough, that could create a traffic hazard. Can we or write a policy, something on how we put it back, or could that just be a regulation between the hauler or in the contract or whatever? But it is a definite, and it gets good for a while, and then it's right back to where it is. And it's gonna cause an accident at some point with the wind along that shore.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So, Councillor, that's definitely something that we manage through the collection contract. So what I would tell residents or yourselves, if we don't know about it, then it's not a problem. So when you have contacted me on that issue before, we've certainly followed up with the contractor, but we really need to know, right? So the residents and you guys are our eyes out in the community. So if it happened to you this week, email us and let us know. So solidwaste@easthants.ca, send it through Recollect, because every time there's an incident, then we can say, is it a trend? Is it a specific person on a specific truck? We can go through that, but that's part of our contract management. Yeah.
So it's not a place for policy with regard to haulers then?
No, that's part of their contract, right? So
Okay.
we do have pieces in the contract which stipulate what they're required to do. So that comes down to contract management. So again, don't feel like you're bothering us. Send us an email, send us a note through Recollect, because again, I don't want people out there frustrated, but I'm not gonna check social media and I'm not gonna read minds. I need to hear from it. So again, solidwaste@easthants.ca or our hotline number or through Recollect. And then we can track and see, is it a one incident or is it multiple? And then we can go with that and go through the
Well,
contractor.
Many people feel, that, it didn't blow over, so it's not too bad this time, but they have concerns, so they, they call if they're concerned enough, they call their local counselor.
Yep.
It's not a habit in the rural area to call that hotline, all the time, so I just make you aware of it. Thank you for the
Just
information.
pass it on to me then, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor. Next is Councillor Hebb.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll move the recommended motion. Move that the Infrastructure and Operations Committee direct staff to proceed with revisions of the solid waste collection and disposal bylaw 10-400, prepare to bring back the final revised draft for detailed review.
Second.
Moving second, I have few councillor on before the motion, so next is Warden Rolston.
Thank you. A question, and I think I know the answer, but just the way that it's worded, and I confess to the different color codings and having to go back and say, what does that mean? What does that mean? And I like a table that says, this is what it said, this is what's changed. I don't know if anybody else finds that easier to understand or not. I'm seeing some heads shaking. But I'm going into what I would have called purple, but I think for the purpose of this is pink. And it's the placement of materials. And in there, it still says that, let me find it. The exact one that I was questioning. It was the one that said it has to be placed directly in front of the home, but that doesn't work in all things. I mean, I'm thinking of at the ends of private roads where there's one pickup. Is this new recycling collection still going to do that? I guess is the question, because the bylaw says your recyclables have to be right in front of your house on the curb with the spacing and everything.
Yeah.
But I know that doesn't happen now, so just some clarification there, I guess.
So through you, Mr. Chair. So we do talk in the bylaw, there are different levels of collection we have in East Hants. So we have curbside. So yes, curbside, if it's your house, put it at the end of your driveway. But we do have shared collection points, private ends of private driveways, seasonal roads during the winter time, end of lanes that we don't go down ever. So those would be the same requirement, but the expectation in the bylaw, and again, we'll make sure it's clear in a new version, is that you have to put it where basically we assign it. So if it can't be at the end of your driveway, then it has to be at the end of your private driveway. The intention is we don't want you to miss your pickup day and then you drive to another district and drop it off at another counselor's house at the end of their driveway. So yeah, so it'll essentially be at the end of your driveway or at your assigned collection location.
Thank you.
Thank you, Warden. Next is Councillor McPhee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you, the staff. Just two comments or a question first. With the 3 meters from the curb, and actually, the person that brought this up to me lives in a neighboring municipality, but how do you measure that, like on a gravel road? Is that from what I thought it would be from basically the front of the ditch or the back of the shoulder? Is that where you measure from on that? Where there's not really a curb?
Yeah, well, we don't take out measuring sticks generally
No.
speaking.
Yeah.
But essentially it's within that distance from, I guess, the end of your like wherever the next paved part of the road is, like that shoulder of the road into your driveway. Essentially what we don't want, and again, that's part of that plain language, is we have people who have collection boxes halfway down a driveway,
Right.
but not all the way to the end of the driveway. We also have people with weird culverts and other things in the place. So again, it's not like we're looking to penalize people if they're dealing with whatever they're dealing with at the end of their driveway, because every driveway is different, but making it within a certain reasonable distance for staff to collect the material. So that's where that and it's been there for 25 years where that distance has been. And we can certainly look at that if that's a concern for people, but essentially we don't want to be walking up people's driveways to get their stuff at the end of at their porch.
Yes, exactly. But, and yeah, I'd never thought about it before. It's never a problem. I just put mine at the end of the driveway. But there's a lot of gravel roads
Yeah.
and, I got thinking about it because this person obviously did have an issue.
Yeah.
And they were measuring from the front of the ditch back of and saying, well, we're within 3 meters of that. And the collector was saying, so.
Yeah.
So you're
If
saying.
if that came up, we would have a conversation as the municipality, we'd have a conversation with the resident. So that again goes back to the previous conversation about where the collectors lie. At the end of the day, they're working for us, they're completing the work for us. So if we go out to your property and we say, this is reasonable, so collector
Yeah.
pick this up,
Okay,
right? If
yeah.
there's a discrepancy there, then we would have that conversation.
Yeah, and
for sure.
hopefully you would,
Yeah.
just
But we have some weird situations with culverts and
Situations, I can
sidewalks
imagine,
and
yeah.
curves and all sorts of things.
Yeah, and the other thing I'd just like to say, received the newsletter from Waste Management yesterday, read through it, it's very easy to read, a lot of good information, and, hope everybody in the municipality, I think that would solve a lot of issues for a lot of people. Explains the changes very well, and, just a very good, newsletter.
I'll pass it on to staff. That's kudos to the staff and Alex Collin for putting it all together, taking what we think and making it make sense.
Yep, very good, thank you, that's it.
Thank you, Councillor. Next is Councillor Marion.
Mr. Chair, and thanks, Andrea, for the report. Question for you about just the removal of various passages from the bylaw over to the policy side. And I was, I guess just kind of thinking about this. So the both are visible. Policy and bylaw are visible on the website. So, the public can see that. So that's great. I guess I just got thinking about some of the implications. So, I can remember talking to a resident in the last year at a multi-unit building about the collection features at their facility, and perhaps the adequacy of containing all of the stuff. And I look in section 9, and there are broad swaths of this going over from the bylaw to policy. And if a change to the bylaw is proposed, that's through a motion of council, and it's on council's will. I'm less clear on if it moves to the policy side. I know the CAO has great purview to administer that. Just remind me if in that example I gave you, so something's in section 9, it goes over to policy. Again, is it at council's direction that we can we direct for policy changes as well? Can you provide some perspective on that?
So through you, Mr. Chair, the intent of going from the bylaw and the policy, so there will be things that are both, right? So when you look at a multi-residential location, for instance, we are looking to put some language in there to clarify again. So when I talk about the housekeeping clarifications, these are things that we do in practice, but we don't have in the bylaw. But we want to make sure that if you're looking at a multi-res location, that there's expectations of the tenants. So you have to sort. But as the owner of that property, you have to provide garbage, recycling, organics collection, because we can drive by and see just a dumpster for garbage. So we want to be very clear that whoever's generating the waste is responsible to sort it. If it's your property, you're responsible to have all these streams. And with that, we have said that we're looking for you to answer those questions to us, like who's your hauler, how frequent. We've had issues where bins have overflown, right? So we get the tenants calling, our bins are overflowing. And so we can have those conversations under the bylaw to enforce and say, you have to get these bins emptied out. You need to have a better schedule because this isn't enough, or a better size bin. And then on the policy piece, it is really talking about, the education process and supports that we can provide, but also that expectation. So if you have new tenants, under the policy, we want you to make sure you're giving them an education package because they're coming into your building so they know how to use it. Our administrative policies go and do lend to our CAO to make those decisions, but I'm quite confident that there was something that we were proposing, that she would say we need to have a conversation with council to make sure they're comfortable with it. Because obviously solid waste is something that everybody talks about and touches every household here. So, but it's just trying to make sure that what's in the bylaw, we can actually enforce.
Thank you.
That's that piece.
So did I hear in section 9, if you look at how maybe it's not, just as easy as we're going to move that all over to policy, there will be some
Yes.
more details
Yes.
coming. Okay.
Yeah.
I guess one other question was, there was somewhere, discussion in the bylaw about, number of bags. So, simple example, and I think that was shaded for, moving over to policy as well. So, a silly example perhaps, but let's say it was council's will that, right now it's in the bylaw, number of recycling bags, but let's pretend council, it moves over to policy, but council wishes to have one extra bag added. Would that be something council still controls, but just makes a recommendation to change policy? How does that actually work if it's not in the bylaw anymore?
So through Mr. Chair, so I would say certainly council can always speak to the CAO about any policies or anything that they're concerned about. When we come to things like changing limits or anything like that, it often links to either regulation change or we have contracts. So we also have to be mindful that if we have a contract in place with a hauler to pick up X, then we need to make sure that we're prepared to pay more if we're asking them to do more. So those are all those current contract conversations.
Yes.
When it comes to the bylaw, I guess our intention from staff is we're never going to issue somebody a summary fence ticket because they had an extra bag of garbage out. What we do is we do compliance promotion, which is we sticker it and say you're over the bag limit and this is the information, give us a call and we'll have a chat. So that's kind of where we were trying to separate those lines. But I would say if there was something that you wanted to speak to the CAO about, our services, then I would think that'd be your
Perfect.
prerogative.
Thank you. No, that's great. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll go for CAO, I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to follow up on the question around policy, so you have two types of policies in your organization. One is a council policy and one is an administrative policy. So council policy would be where the MGA doesn't require you to have a bylaw about something, but you want to weigh in on something, you would create a council policy. Those are all available on our public website. Administrative policies are where in a bylaw or a council policy, you give the CAO authority to create an administrative policy. What would typically be in that, and when this comes back to council, so this is just a question for council today is, do you want us to try and formulate these to separate them? What you'll see when this comes back is the only things we would put into an administrative policy would be operational in nature. Things that I would have a decision over on a day-to-day basis that council would hand over to me to make those decisions. At any point, if what we're doing in our operations doesn't sit well with council, that's always up for discussion at council. And you can direct me to change how we do business in any, and then I would go back and change the administrative policy accordingly. But generally, our administrative policies are not on our website. They're not something that we put out into the ether as a rule. Now, having said that, if somebody wants one of our administrative policies, we're transparent and open to provide them the information in the policy. We just don't post them because they can change, and often they will change as the tide changes in whatever particular industry we're dealing with. So that's sort of the where the policy versus bylaw sits. Now, when we come back and you see the bylaw and you're like, no, I really want that to be in council's direction, and you've put it in policy, then that's when we would have that conversation. Like, does it make sense to make it an administrative policy, or does it make sense to make it a council policy? You still have more flexibility with a council policy than a bylaw. And we've done that over the years, is whatever we don't need to have in a bylaw, we've generally put into a council policy. I think the solid waste tipping fee policy is a good example. Our municipal fees policy is a good example. The MGA says sometimes you need to have fees in a bylaw, and sometimes they can be in a policy. So we did that split a few years ago. So when this comes back to council and you see the policy stuff versus bylaw stuff, and if you're not comfortable with how we've sort of looked at this and distributed it, then you can certainly have that conversation. There's nothing that's setting in stone. This is just a question of, do you want us to go down this route, do the work to separate the two? Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Rhino. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just through you to staff, you talked about there is some nuances, separate things, and types of driveways and so on and so forth. We had a problem here, probably last year with regard to bags of garbage recycles being put at the end of the driveway, but it turned out that they put them across the road due to the fact that there's heavy farming using that driveway in and out. I just want to clarify, is there going to be an avenue that those things, nuances will be taken in under consideration and then changes could be made?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So that would be one of those things that we would have that conversation with the resident directly, and then we would direct the contractor one way or another. Because like I said, every driveway in East Hants, I think, or in Nova Scotia probably is different. So in that case, we had a conversation with the resident, we had a conversation with the contractor, and that was resolved. So that's, they are putting the material on the other side.
Yeah, I understand that,
yeah.
but I want to make sure that there's still an avenue for that to take place within,
Absolutely.
not hard and fast, we're not going to do this. I just want to make sure that avenue is still open there for these special things when they come up.
Yep, absolutely. Yep.
All right,
That's just
thank
part
you.
of everyday business, yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Go back to the warden.
Thank you. So that kind of begs another question, I guess. If our bylaw states that it has to be on the side of the road where your driveway is, does that not give the contractor the option to say, no, we're not going to pick it up on the other side? Because your bylaw, which is what we went by when we bid on the contract, says we don't have to. Or could we be in a situation like that?
So through you, Mr. Chair, as I said before, though, your collection point is based on where the municipality has assigned it to you. So if we've changed your assignment to across the street because of farm trucks going up and down this road, and we're concerned that stuff's gonna get blown around, and it's literally across the street, then I direct them to do that, as that's part of our conversations with our contractor. So we do have spots where it's not at the end of your driveway, it's where the municipality has assigned
I
it.
understand that.
Yeah.
But I am just afraid that by it being entrenched in the bylaw as such, if there's a situation that wasn't identified when the contractor bid on the contract, so we've been down this road before, when it came to whether or not you could put blue bags in a container or not, and we've had contractors refuse to pick them up.
Yeah.
Because it didn't say in their contract they had to take them out of a container. So if we have in our bylaw that it shall be at the end of the driveway, could they refuse to pick it up elsewhere? I guess.
Yeah. So what I would say through you, Mr. Chair, is staff will take that feedback and we'll ensure that there's wording there that it's very clear that it's either the end of the driveway or the assigned location by the municipality.
So
that
and
they're covered.
Following up, I do have another question. And I have read 4.1 and 5.1. And I know you will know of a situation I'm about to speak to, that when the residents on a provincial road meet those criteria, but because of the actions of another one only resident on that provincial road, which has offended or whatever the contractor now does not go down that provincial road and pick up any of those items. And I guess they're just, to me, is there anything we can do about that?
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Chair, so the situation we do have is that this is a road, that it's one of those provincial, but they don't maintain it roads.
No, it's not.
Right, so.
It is a provincially maintained
Okay.
road.
So the issue is that there's no turning area, or there wasn't a turning area that was not in the provincial right of way. So it was on an individual's property, and they were threatening the staff.
physically and verbally. And so they do have a right to refuse work if they're concerned about their equipment or their staff. And so we are working through those. And we have a number of roads that we're actually going through a process right now where we're having roads that I guess I would say are grandfathered in for their level of service that we've never had documentation on permission to be on the road or permission to turn where we're turning. So we're actually been working through that for the last year, picking away. So that is one of those roads that we are working on, absolutely, so that we have the right documentation. So if somebody moves and, you know, we have permission to turn here or what have you. So yeah, there's a lot of those things that do pop up. That's a very specific situation. Yeah.
It just occurs to me that it is unfair to other residents to be disadvantaged by the actions of one resident. And that, you know, if it's a continued issue, and I won't get into the weeds any further, you know, perhaps there are avenues. The RCMP should call on anyone who threatens haulers or whatever. And maybe we would not pick up, I don't know, I haven't seen that in the bylaw. Maybe we don't stop there. I don't know. But it does, I know it's festering there. And anyway, it's, and this is, yeah, this is a fully provincially maintained road. So anyway, we'll leave it and hopefully things will get better. Thank you.
Seeing no one else want to speak, we go for the vote. And it passed unanimously. Okay, our next item is CCOA crosswalk request with Jesse.
Perfect. Thank you, through Mr. Chair. So the community quarter options for adults building has recently opened in the business park. It's expected that there will be an increase in pedestrian usage in the general area. And CCOA had requested for consideration for a crosswalk for that area. So the CCOA building is a unique hybrid site, which includes both commercial and institutional uses. The closest intersection is a notable distance away. However, as detailed in the report, traffic counts haven't warranted a threshold for a permanent sidewalk yet, but there may be interest in continuing monitoring the site, both vehicle and pedestrian count in the coming years. And that's ultimately where council or where staff are going with the recommendation is essentially a crosswalk isn't warranted yet for the location. It is an interesting location, and with the continued expansion of the business park, it may warrant in the future. And that's where staff are recommending to bring back mention it in a future capital budget when data justifies the opportunity to bring the topic back proactively and have that in the motion. So to create some visuals, staff did look at the site. This is the CCOA building. Staff looked at different options. Targeting one of the hypothetical options that was detailed was a crossing at a location. There is pricing work that went into it of projected costs. That's down here farther. Yeah, so the costing, so staff did material costing, looking at the range of $30,000 to $40,000 if it was needed in the future, with ongoing estimated maintenance costs of annual costs of 700 to 1,000. Not daunting, it's just not warranted yet. And so that's where the recommendation lies. And so I would open up the floor for questions.
Okay, thank you, Jesse. I have Councilor Garden Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I guess it's safe to assume that unlike, say, the last crosswalk that we had across the number 2, which was looking to see how many pedestrians attempted to cross the road, this is solely looking at how much traffic is traveling on that particular road in a day?
Ultimately, there'd be some discretion. The traffic count is the key indicator. It's the most critical one, and right now it's not close on the traffic count, and that's the determining factor. And there's discretion where you would look at it from a pedestrian crossing stance, and that's where staff would consider, okay, where it's an institutional use, is it a core destination for the community? Then you'd use your discretion on pedestrian counts and movements to make that decision. But ultimately, the vehicle count is the critical one on making the decision, because if it's not there, that's an issue of putting this type of infrastructure in place wherever across the municipality.
And this is a municipal road.
It is.
So you follow our own municipal standards when looking for how the number of vehicles, the criteria?
Through Mr. Chair, we're following guidance from tax standards. So the Transportation Association of Canada, we go by their manual, where we're silent and we don't have our own separate policy on the topic. We defer to those national protocols.
Okay. And my concern is that realistically, we might never get to the criteria that warrants a crosswalk there. I just feel like that is possible, definitely possible. And I know when they set up this location here, there was some excitement about the potential for the pool and the library, and just getting out and having a sidewalk for clients to take advantage of in good weather and whatnot. And as well, clients require a little more when it comes to safely crossing the road than just, hoping, whether it be a time allowance for getting across that road. And I just feel like that criteria might never be met in order to warrant a crosswalk there. And those are my concerns when waiting to see what happens down the road. It might be an indefinite wait, and I feel like a crosswalk there would be very useful. And possibly useful, they have a great cafe there that hopefully, they are really hoping that the patrons will come from different businesses in the park and come there for lunch. But once again, if it comes down to a vehicular traffic count, I'm just concerned that it's not going to happen even down the road. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Next is Councilor Marion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to Jesse. I'd like to just echo Councilor Garden Cole's comments in terms of it being a, I think long-term, a really good potential initiative, and I certainly see the utility and the need at that location. My question for Jesse is around the cost figures, and I was actually kind of pleased to see that the cost figures are, as noted, I think it was around $30,000 to $40,000. I just wanted to get a little perspective on why the cost came in at that figure. From my recollection, the Milford crosswalk that we had talked about recently, a motion that was up, was around maybe 120. And I know each location is different, but on this particular issue, is there a reason why, compared to other crosswalks, this is coming in, so dramatically different in terms of its cost?
Through Mr. Chair, for this particular one, it was based on a tabletop review of what was needed. There was snow on the ground, so assumptions were made on flat surface, easy to work with, and it was a smaller scope. There wasn't a ditch involved or projected, and a modest sized landing that didn't need to connect to anything. So there's also wasn't any DSDS signs implemented as well, digital speed, or not DSDS, sorry. RRFBs, rectangular flashing beacons, which is a big cost driver depending on what your need is for a crossing.
Okay.
That's not in play on here, which is a big cost driver.
Yes.
So based on the low vehicle count, your first threshold is signs only. And without additional signalization, the additional signalization potentially can drive cost. And that would have been the benchmark projected out in Milford based on a comparable along the two.
Yeah.
I would say that would be a key difference maker,
Okay.
apart from the civil work.
Yes. Thank you. Great. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Dixon.
Thank you. Through the chair, I guess, Jesse, the landing pads, I'm gonna repeat, I guess, some of Council Marion's comments. It's $30,000 to $40,000. That's for a pad on each side of the road, and what else is included in that? It seems like a high price.
So through Mr. Chair, so you create your concrete base. There's also some asphalt work that has to happen. You have to mill out and create a smooth transition for accessibility to meet current standards, your curb cuts. We would be looking to install TWISIes, tactile walking indicator strips, so that visual impairedness is also implemented or a consideration in your crossing.
Right.
So those are the things that are added on to a scope. It's not just framing up and pouring a concrete. There's some detail on the transition and creating the accessible standards that are now current today.
And do we need flashing lights? I know you mentioned that.
Through Mr. Chair, no. With the traffic counts and it's not warranted. It's not going through the table. There's a table and chart based on speed and vehicle counts of when you would add different levels of safety implementation, and it's not close. It's not close to requiring signalization. It would be signage only based on speed when you got to that point.
So if some of this work was to be, say, donated or by a certified contractor that you recognize, would that be helpful to us?
Well, through Mr. Chair, it's not the cost that would be a barrier. It's just the technical requirements of whether you should put one in or not. And the caution that staff would give is if it's not warranted, putting crossings in place can then present a hazard because people become complacent. They stop taking crossings seriously. It can create it can create confusion, and that's the flag, and that's where technical staff have to stand by the standards, because if we put crossings where they're not warranted, the public loses faith in the requirements, or they stop paying attention, and that's when accidents can happen.
I was afraid you'd have a good answer. Okay. No, that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Next is Councillor McPhee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff, Jesse, the TAC manual, does it support having mid-block crosswalks?
Oh, excellent question. So, through Mr. Chair, mid-block is not the best practice. Crossings in particular, and formalizing crossings, are always preferred as per manual. It writes right into it that at intersections it's preferred. And in fact, at any intersection, residents or pedestrians legally allowed to cross, and vehicles are required to stop if you're at any intersection. It's not well known to the public, and that's why you formalize those. That's ideal. Mid-block is in unique scenarios where you have to consider, is there a reasonable path to get to a safer option? And if not, then you consider these things. But it's not the preferred best practice, mid-block. It is at intersections.
Right, yes, and I know that's in everybody's driver manual, and they take it that every intersection is a crosswalk, but probably a lot of people don't recognize that. I'll move the recommended motion. Move that Infrastructure and Operations Committee recommend that council requests that a crosswalk in support of the community corridor options for adults location in the Elmsdale Business Park be brought back in a future budget for consideration once more traffic data is collected and pedestrian movements to access the institutional commercial site are better understood.
Moved and seconded. I have a couple councillor on before. We go to Councillor Garden Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to comment on the comment about drivers getting complacent about crosswalks. I know that came up in a earlier request from the Department of Transportation or Public Works. And in that case, and this does tie into what we are talking about here, in that case, the crosswalks would have been such a massive distance apart that I felt like it was a real stretch for them to be saying that it wasn't a suitable place because we don't want drivers to become complacent. First of all, complacent drivers, that's on them. If there's crosswalks that are a kilometer apart and people are getting complacent about it, they need to review their driving skills because, we're not talking about places, and there are places around this province where you can literally be approaching a crosswalk and see another in your view up ahead, and that is not the case at all. My concern with this, and certainly there are not enough crosswalks, actually there are none in this park. My concern is that they are going to be crossing this road to access the sidewalk on the other side. And I want them to be doing that safely. And it may take a little longer for them to get to the other side. And I think a crosswalk would be an ideal way for them to be assured that they're going to get there safely. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Warden Rolston.
Thank you. Interesting discussion, certainly. My one concern that pops up to me that hasn't been mentioned is that if we do, staff's recommendation is based on the technical data and everything that we follow for all crosswalks, correct?
Correct.
So that if we start and say, well, this is a good exception, and it may well be a wonderful exception to make, but as soon as we make one wonderful exception, how many other groups are going to think that they should have a wonderful exception too? And maybe they would, but if it's safety overall, I guess, which occurs to me, because then at what point do you have, for example, mid-block crosswalks where they're not ideal? And to me, a mid-block crosswalk for the type of traffic that uses the business park, I would assume there's a lot of heavy truck traffic and that using there that, and I know it's on the driver, but if they're coming to an intersection, they know they're going to stop. If they're coming to just a crosswalk out of nowhere and they're not accustomed to driving there, they might not. And it's, the complacency for me is more the complacency of the traveling public, whoever they might be using the crosswalk, that could become complacent thinking the crosswalk is going to protect them when it should, but it doesn't necessarily. So this is a tough one because I understand the situation, and maybe when we look at it in the future, we would look at it, is there some way to get these folks easily to an intersection and put a crosswalk there to the sidewalk? I don't know, But at this point in time, I'm going to support the recommended motion. Having said that, I certainly think it's well worth looking at again in the future to see if there's some way to make something work. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Warden. I have a question. Can I pass you the chair? Okay, thank you. So Jesse, is there any possible intersection closer than this one to the building? Like,
Through Madam Warden, no, there is significant distance. The closest intersection, I believe, is Market, which is it'd be several hundred meters away.
okay. I was thinking if there's something closer and we could put stop sign probably on that stretch, like double stop sign, that could limit the incidents because you have to stop on a stop sign anyway, right? Like, I don't know if that's possible, but something came to my mind. So. Thank you.
Yeah, and the chair back to you.
Okay, seeing no one else, we go for the vote. Okay, it passed with 7-4 and 7-3 and 3 against. Councilor Dixon, Councilor Rhino, and Garden Cole voted nay. So I will conclude our
Just before we go, we did have staff come down. This took a little longer than anticipated, but rather than leave 10 minutes early for a lunch that's already scheduled early, the suggestion is that we would move in and try and get at least maybe one item or two off the agenda for Parks, Rec, and Culture, as we can't go into planning because public members aren't here, so. Yeah, if we start with item 27, if we can get through that, might shave some time off the end of the day, folks.
okay, we have to adjourn first from
Yes.
INO and go to Rec with Councilor Ryan.
Okay, we'll call this meeting of Parks, Recreation, and Culture together to order. First order of business, approval of the minutes of January 20th. Is there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, I will approve the minutes of January the 20th. First up is District Recreation Fund.
27.
What?
Going to 27, because we have time to do it.
Oh, to 27? Okay. Moving to 27, volunteer nominations and model volunteer. Aurora Doothright, you be taking that?
Just presenting here the staff report for municipal volunteer recognition nominations and to move for model volunteer 2026. The report outlines the 2026 nominations and provides a recommendation for the model volunteer award, which was forwarded to council in a confidential memo. The model volunteer is kept confidential until the presentation of the award, and we won't be talking further on that in this report. You'll see the recommended motion here. The awards will be held April 24th, 2026, as approved by council. The backup location of Rawdon District Fire Hall is being used as there were challenges securing catering in Mount Uniacke. The volunteer award nomination period ran through January and February, and we received a total of 15 eligible nominations. This totals 16 volunteers, as one of the nominations is for 2 people together. So you'll see the list here, a really good mix across many districts, throughout the municipality, which is nice to see, a mix of different organizations. There are also a list here of the Canadian Volunteer Fire Service Association Long Service Awards for this year. The individual fire departments nominate the members, and they can receive long service bars, as you'll see, 35, starting at 30 years and going up every 5 years. These folks are also invited to the volunteer awards. There are also other people invited to the awards, as you'll see, each member of council, local MLAs, members of parliament, the CV, FSA representative, and last year's model volunteer. And the budget is $7,500 for the awards, which is included in operating. And I will scroll right back up. Happy to answer questions if you have any.
All right, thank you for the report. First up to speak, Councillor Merriam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to go ahead and move the recommended motion. I move that the Parks, Recreation and Culture Committee recommends to Council to approve the volunteer award nominees and the model volunteer be accepted as presented in the confidential memo sent to Council by email, and for the model volunteer be designated to represent the municipality be stands at the Provincial Volunteer Awards.
Seconded by Councillor Mitchell. Comment or question with regard to the motion? Seeing none, we'll go to the vote. How do we get back there? Where do you see it? Okay, there.
Somebody hasn't voted because there's 10 of us.
There is, 9-1.
Oh, okay. We have to start again.
Okay, we have to do it again. Go to the vote. We have to sign in again. Lovely. Voted is in and it's passed unanimously. All right, what time is it?
5 minutes left. Do we want to start District Rec?
No, I think District 5 minutes is.
Tourism grant? I don't know.
How long will it take tourism grants?
What was on the agenda? 10 minutes.
We can introduce it.
Hmm?
Just,
We can start by all means.
could
Yeah,
I speak to that?
sure.
If
There
it's
you
up
go.
to you.
Well, where'd you go?
I just wanted to say that we do have a half an hour set aside for nominating committee. It's not going to take a half an hour. I think probably between 5 and 10 minutes will be more than enough. So if we were to start the tourism grants, the probability is that we would have those finished by 11:45, 10 to 12, and that would allow us shave a little more time off the end of the day, folks, if that's agreeable to everyone.
Okay, so we'll go to 11:45. Agreeable? Agreed. All right, so do we want to, what is your wish? Do you want to do start District Rec, first intake, or do you want to go to tourism? Tourism? All right, Aurora, go ahead.
Okay.
Well, you were on.
Hello. We have in front of you now the 2026 Tourism Grant Report. This outlines the groups who applied for funding, as well as the recommendations for funding from the Staff Grant Review Committee. The deadline closed just recently, February 28th. And you'll see here in the report, the budget for the tourism grant each year in the operating budget is $40,000, but the total amount requested by all the groups was actually $76,385. After Staff Grant Review Committee was able to review the applications, there are two groups here that are being recommended to pursue community grant instead of tourism grant, which brings the total funding requested from the recommended groups to $68,385. But to follow policy and meet budget, there is a recommendation below that totals $40,000. And that $40,000 total is listed here in the recommended motion. Just as a quick review of Tourism Grant, this program provides single-year financial support to nonprofit community groups that are operating a tourism attraction or facility. This also encompasses programs, projects, or experiences to enhance visitor experience. And we really look for the projects or the facilities to align with municipal strategies, such as the tourism strategy and the strategic plan. They have to tie into the tourism sector quite directly. And here's just a quick overview of things that are right out of the policy. They must demonstrate fiscal responsibility, have available resources, and the amount of the grant can be determined based on the ties to policy. So you'll see here 7 groups have applied, and you'll see at the bottom the 2 that are being recommended to go through another grant. But I'll go just item by item very quickly here. The first group with the biggest ask is the Maitland District Development Association. They operate 2 facilities. They operate Gallery 215 as well as Beyond the Wharf Artisans. And Gallery 215 is looking for funding to supplement staff wages, and they took a pause last year. This site wasn't actually open in 2025. Gallery 215 is looking to reopen, so there are some costs that they're looking to improve the shop, improve experience there. And at Beyond the Wharf Artisans, which is in Dawson Dowell Park, they are looking to add Wi-Fi. So part of the funding here is going to help cover the cost of Wi-Fi. They requested $19,000 to meet budget. We're recommending $9,500. But the full ask does meet policy. Everything that they've asked for meets policy. East Hants Historical Society, they are looking for funds to help run the Lower Selma Museum. The main ask is going toward costs for staffing, but they're also looking for funding to do some interior work, wall repair and wall painting, siding and window repairs, beam reinforcement. They asked for $17,935. Policy actually states we can only fund $12,500. They already received $20,000 in community partnership funding through the municipality, and that $12,500 additional through tourism grant would bring us up to 50% of their operating budget, which is all policy allows for tourism grant is 50%. So that is just a per policy cut there. We can also look at helping them, and we have already started looking at ways to help them with the larger exterior capital work, because those projects can funnel through heritage grants, both municipally and provincially. The next project you'll see is Gore Trails. This is a multi-use, mainly mountain biking trail ground site. They're looking to increase their event hosting capacity by building some shelters. They're looking at a sea can, which will have a roof coming off of the side. And they asked for $16,450, but the policy states again that we fund 50% of their contribution. They can ask for 50% of the project, which is their total here, $16,450, but a main big cost in the project estimate was in-kind work. So the time that the volunteers take to assemble the structures, the cash contribution, we're looking to match their cash contribution. So that's the $6,000 there you'll see of recommended funding. The next group that have come through tourism grant is Come Home East Hants. They actually run Tide Fest, and they ask for $10,000. This is very similar to their funding request from 2025. The Staff Grant Review Committee are recommending a $7,000 grant by way of helping with their facility rental cost. You might recall last year, they came through tourism grant after the application deadline had closed, and council committed up to $10,000 in funding, of which just over $6,000 was used, and the group paid the remaining $4,000 of the rent. So we're looking for a similar situation this year. However, Staff Grant Review Committee are recommending a $7,000 contribution flat from the municipality, and the group would cover the rest of the cost of the facility, which is just over $10,000 estimated, just closer to 11. The next group is Walton Area Development Association. They run the Walton Lighthouse, and they have asked for $5,000, and their full request meets policy. And given the amount, we, Staff Grant Review Committee, do recommend the full ask. This property is owned by the municipality and operated by the community group. They also receive about $9,000 in other annual funding from the municipality, not through tourism grant, through other streams. The two groups here that are being proposed to go through community grant are Maitland Auxiliary. The Maitland Fire Auxiliary hosts a car show, which benefits the fire hall, and you'll see here just a quick outline of both events, as well as Maitland Days. So the Fire Auxiliary Car Show requested $2,000. Maitland Days requested $6,000. And the idea here is that the municipality does fund events in a similar capacity, such as the Milford Meltdown, such as Shubenacadie Hay Days. These events already go through community grant. So these Staff Grant Review Committee, upon review of the applications, really see more tie with that grant program versus a tourism grant. So that's that request there and the reasoning. Strategic alignment, you'll see very quickly, the strategic plan ties in with tourism opportunities that helps showcase what the area has to offer. This supports pride of place. The East Hants tourism strategy is being reviewed this year per council motion from earlier in the year. So some of the strategy work that we're doing on the tourism strategy may affect this policy come next year, but that will come to council at a later date. And here we have, just in the financial considerations to wrap up, some information for you. The Tourism Grant Reserve currently sits at just over $124,000. And there are alternates that we have listed here below if council wishes to meet the group requests at different amounts. You'll see here the list of applicants, their original requests, the requests that are the recommended funding that's currently in the motion. And you'll see here just a look at the percentages that each group would be receiving in that motion. And there are two alternatives. One alternative is that to meet the $40,000 budget, everyone could get 58.5% of their ask at a flat amount. And there is an alternative too, which is funding per policy. And I hope above I've done a relatively, given council enough information about why each group, what requests they've come with, what meets policy and what doesn't. But that total would be $52,500, which is over and above the $40,000 pot. So those alternatives are below for consideration, but I will scroll right back up to the recommended motion and happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. First up to speak is Warden Rolston.
Thank you. Just one quick question, and then I'm going to move the motion. I am assuming that we don't have any reserves for this grant pot sitting there.
Through the chair, we do. The reserve actually sits at just over $124,000. There's quite a healthy reserve in there right now.
Okay, then that kind of changes the water on the beans for me.
I'll just stay here.
So I have to go back down to those alternate motions again and have a look. All right, so I don't know what other councilors think, but I would look at taking enough from those reserves to fund the full amount that policy allows, which would draw $12,500 from reserve. So that, I'm not going to make the motion because I do see that two other councilors are wishing to speak, but that's where my mind would be going, since the funding is in reserve, that we would look at doing that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next up would be, where did my mouse go? Councillor Musa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question about the Gore Trail. Like, we have Lot Trails Association here in the municipality. So what make that as a, I'm not familiar with it. So is it a tourist attraction or is it just a trail or, because we have a couple trails in Mount Uniacke that lead to all the Uniacke State and stuff. So if we keep opening that to those, that fund to those association, we're gonna be exceeding way more. Like, I don't know if that's coming in the new policy or something to look at. Thank you.
Through the chair, the Gore Trails, I'll just refer here to this quick description, but they have around 300 to 400 members that pay annually. And from that list of membership, they submit the postal codes for the folks who use the trail. And over 70% of those users are coming from outside of East Hants, from throughout the province. So that is a main determining factor in going through tourism grant, because we can see by the numbers the amount of people that are coming from outside of East Hants to use the trail system. That's not to say that there aren't other groups that could apply for tourism grant in the future. You did mention Uniacke Estate. There is a piece to this policy that states that the property can't be supported by a higher authority such as Nova Scotia Museum. So I can't speak directly to whether that group fits or not, but as an example specifically, that site likely wouldn't fit. But that's not to say, I hope that gives a bit of an explanation as to what puts Gore Trails in this pot specifically.
Yeah, because I know the my River Trail, there's way more people come to that trail, and it's all funded by DRF. So there's another option to fund those trails association instead of adding up like to the tourism grant every year. So that's my point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Musa. Councillor Garden Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I was thinking along the same lines as the warden, just wondering if we had reserves or how long it had been since our amount was set at 40,000, how long that has been.
Thank you, through the chair. So obviously we've spoken about the reserve, and there's a fairly healthy reserve pot there. And I think it was around 2020-ish, 2019, 2020, where the pot was around $30,000. And I believe that was expended 2 years in a row, and then council chose to actually move that up to $40,000. So since that time, at least in my time here, it's been $40,000. This is the first year we've actually come close or even overspent. Last year we had 2 applications. The year previous, I think it was about 4.
Okay, well, in my mind, I see that as a good thing that people are out there volunteering to keep these things going. My second question is, so all these applications are submitted in completion, including Come Home East Hants?
Yes.
Yeah, through the chair. Everything was submitted on time with everything that was required.
Okay, thank you.
All right, for right now, I'm going to turn it over to the warden. I'd like to ask a few questions. If I may, warden? Go ahead. All right, just a couple of questions. Number one, Gore Trails, is it privately or is it a group?
Yeah, through the chair, this is a nonprofit group applying. They have a land use agreement on a piece of private land, if that makes sense.
They have a land use agreement.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. When I look at this, back to this chart here now. When I look, what would be the difference between, let's say, Maitland Days, where you would be trying to attract tourism along that shore, and with the recent closing of the Lawrence House, what would be the difference between that and the Come Home East Hants thing? And ultimately, in the same breath, what would be the difference between the Maitland Auxiliary Car Show, which brings tourism from outside, when we are so badly needing tourism in that area? So could somebody point me, clarify that, please?
Yep, through the chair. So Staff Grant Review Committee take a look at these applications, and they include things such as expected attendance, data from previous years. So the applications for the Maitland Days events and for the car show didn't necessarily meet the same threshold as something like a Come Home East Hants Tide Fest does in terms of attendance, so numbers of attendance and data. So it may be true that they are attracting folks who don't live in East Hants, but the Staff Grant Review Committee can only work on what was submitted in terms of data and numbers. So the spirit of the events, of course, we want to support these events in any way that we can, in any way that policy is written to. And Staff Grant Review Committee, looking specifically at the tourism grant pot, We also go from precedent. So there were times in the past where someone like a Shuby Heydays has applied and they were directed away from this pot. So we look at precedent and we look at policy. But in the end, this is council's grant program. So willing to amend the motions any way council sees fit.
Respectively speaking, you know, some things in the rural area can't compete with some events in the quarter area, right? Just because of the population and the money that's out there to advertise and so on. But it's just as important for those rural areas to have that opportunity to increase tourism along that shore, because, you know, with a very limited number of businesses along the shore, we depend on tourism along there. And right now, you know, to drop back to a 250 to 750, you know, event hosting grant or however that is, that's a far ask from the 6 and 2 that they were asking for. So I guess I got concerns around that area right there. That's it for me, Warden. Go back to me. Next up would be the warden.
Thank you. I do think that staff are interpreting the policies that we have in place, and I don't think we really want to try and change that on the fly. That's just my opinion. But I do think that for next year's budget, we should review the amount that we set aside for these grants. And by that time, we may well have a better idea of the impacts of provincial decisions that have been made that are going to impact tourism and are going to greatly impact tourism along this shore area. Regarding the two that have been referred to community grants, I understand why that was done, because that's where all of the other groups who do one-day things, like the Knoll Fire, well, there's, I guess, maybe stretch over more than one day. But all the other ones that have these community things do fall under that. And if the funding that's available in that grant stream is not seen to be meeting the needs of the groups that are being directed towards it, that I think is something that we should probably look at too when we go to budget next year. I know that doesn't solve the problem for this year, and I do hear where Councillor Rhino is coming from. I also hear where staff are coming from, and so it is a tough one. But given what we've been told at this time, I'm going to move the alternative motion to that Parks, Recreation, and Culture Committee recommends to council that the tourism grant funding recommendation totaling $52,500 be approved for the following organizations, with $12,500 drawn from the tourism grant reserve. Maitland District Development Association, $19,000. East Hants Historical Society, $12,500. Come Home East Hants Association, up to $10,000 towards facility rental costs. Gore Trail, $6,000, and Walton Area Development Association, $5,000. And that, no, I guess that's it. And I put the up to there. I don't know if it needed to be there or not. I'll refer to staff when it came to the Come Home East Hants.
It's been moved by the warden, seconded by Councillor Mitchell. On to speak. You warden, you're off. Can you take yourself off?
The two things.
Okay. CAO. And we're getting very close to, I'm gonna make it quick, as quick as possible.
I will do that. I just want to remind folks about this particular reserve because it's a little bit different than your other reserves, and what the warden has motioned, there's no issues with doing that. This reserve, because you're issuing grants in February typically for the following fiscal year, council keeps this reserve balance at that $40,000, which is your next year's commitment to these grants. So you've still got $72,000 of wiggle room in this particular reserve. But for future discussions, if I'm not here, just remember that that reserve does have to stay at that 40,000 or whatever your budget is for next year's, because you're actually spending next year's money this year. Thank you.
Final one, Councillor Musa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going back to that Gore Trail. Like that could apply for DRF instead of like recommending other community group to get $750. This group can get 6,000 from DRF, and those other groups can get close to what they're asking. So I don't know why we didn't go that way instead of going the other way.
So through the chair, this group has applied in the past, and at that time, they were directed through discussion from DRF to tourism. So that was why we have them grouped in here, and they've applied again, because they have, I think 3 years ago, 2-3 years ago, I'd have to look back on it, they did apply through tourism grant, and there was discussion at that time with council, and council wanted to keep them in this stream versus the DRF. But again, you know, it's ultimately council's
Yeah,
decision.
but in previous year, we didn't have many applications. This time we have more application than, and this application will allow them to get the full amount from DRF and open the door for other community group to get the money from this, because I don't think the other ones, they can apply for DRF. I don't know if that an option here, or I'm not the counselor of the area, but I would like to support everyone, every group that comes here and open up for the whole thing.
All right, before we continue, we've passed the 11:45 adjournment. Now, you're saying that you need 10 minutes for, can wrap up
Probably
there.
5.
It's going down all the time. Maybe we can get this right down to 0. So do you want to finish do you want to finish this? I don't see any heads going like that, so, all right. So, does staff want to direct or speak to Councillor Moose's comments?
I would speak to that.
You will speak to Councillor Moose's comments. All right, Gordon.
Thank you. Yeah, well, and we try to fit groups in wherever we can fit them the best and get them some funding to help them out. The issue around this, back when it was directed to tourism, was the concern about whether, how do I want to word it? Because they are open for local residents to mountain bike or whatever on those trails, but was not seen at that time, and we haven't had any data to say that that has changed, that the majority of people working for this or using these trails are not from the district. It's not benefiting folks from the district. It may benefit some, but the majority of people who are using these trails are coming from outside the district and outside probably East Hants. It's more of a tourist draw than providing a trail for local folks that they use on a regular basis. Having said that, I can't say if anyone ever goes and walks on those trails. I don't know. We don't have that information. But anyway, that's why it was tourism directed, because it seemed to more fit with the users that were coming in to use this facility that they're working to build, were more seemed to be from a tourism standpoint than a local standpoint.
Councillor Musa, does that gonna answer your question? I'm gonna lose. You're good? Seeing no one left to speak on the list, and we have a motion on the floor to go to the, I do believe it's the 50, by policy, what we can go up to 52,000? Yeah, all right. So, we'll go to the vote. And the vote is in, is passed unanimously. All right, this brings us to our end time. So I would say we're gonna adjourn to return at 1:30 to planning.